India's highest levels of government are reforming the basic structure of agriculture. The intent is to loosen regulations on pricing and storage and to permit direct sales of produce. The rules have protected India's farmers from the free market for decades. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the reforms, quote, a watershed moment, end quote, for Indian agriculture. In part two of Aravinda Anand Tharaman's Newsmaker interview, Prabhat Bezboruah, chairman of the Tea Board of India, describes a new board mission to increase consumption, promote tea exports, and expand markets at home and overseas. He also addresses discussions underway to transfer regulatory oversight of India's tea industry from the Ministry of Commerce to the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare.
The Tea Board of India has been in the news recently for various reforms that seem to be underway. We spoke to Prabhat Bezboruah, chairman of the Tea Board of India, to understand the changes that are brewing with the board, as well as his views on how the Indian tea industry is faring this year. Prabhat Bezboruah has been chairman since 2017 and is the first tea planter to hold this position. How has 2021 been for the Indian tea industry?
It's been quite bad. 2020, despite the lockdown and despite the fact that the tea gardens were shut for a while, turned out to be a pretty good year for tea. When supply is restricted, tea prices go up. This year, Indian volumes have recovered and will almost touch the 2019 levels. And demand is sluggish. I personally don't believe that demand has contracted over the COVID epidemic, but it's sluggish. It's, you can say, stagnant, maybe 1% or so higher. And 19 was a bad year for tea. So 21 will be a pretty bad year, especially for the South Indian industry, where prices are lower even than 2019.
Are rising costs and slowing exports the primary reason?
The primary reason is that volume, our output, our crop has bounced back to the 2019 levels. Remember, we had record exports in 2019 of 255 million kilos. Last year, they were about 210 or 15. Or this year, they're likely to be lower even than last year. The whole logistics chain having been broken in various places, various reasons.
Right.
Indian being uncompetitive. Kenyan teas are still available cheaper than equivalent Indian teas. I mean, South India doesn't compete with Kenya. Basically, you have orthodox exports from South India, which are decent. They compete with Sri Lankan exports. The South Indian CTCs that are much lower in the value chain than Kenyans. But North Indian CTC exports are going to be very badly affected because Kenyans are available much cheaper. Well, the domestic demand is also sluggish. So prices are down everywhere.
Will growers carry forward tea again this year, like 2019?
There might be some carry forward stock because exports are going to be much lower than 2019. But, in 19, we made 1,395 million kilos or 1,390 million kilos, and we exported 250 or 55 million kilos. So if our exports had been at 2019 levels, you wouldn't have seen any carry forward this year.
India's hospitality industry has still to recover from the pandemic. What's the impact on tea?
Hospitality is a fairly large chunk of demand in India. Hospitality includes your tea stalls, roadside tea stalls. That's a big demand. But the total out-of-home demand for tea in India is only around 15% of the total demand. In-home usage, drinking of tea has increased to offset some of the drop in OOH. I don't buy the story that Indians are drinking less tea in 2021 than they were even in 2019. But I don't think you're really going to see a very bad last quarter as far as demand is concerned. I don't know about prices, but I think the demand will be there.
You've spoken about the need to liberalize the market. What would you say is the current reliance on auctions as a price discovery platform? What needs to change?
Well, I've always thought that the auctions are a good place to sell your tea, provided it's the only place to sell your tea. You can't have a system which acts as the primary price discovery mechanism. That's the auction. And then it and expose it to manipulation, all kinds of, there's no overt collusion among the main buyers because, there are companies which are bound by very strict ethical codes and they do follow those codes. So I would hasten to dispel the notion that there is any overt collusion between at least the big boys, so to speak. In any auction, there's what's known as a demand multiplier. Even the biggest boy, to get 1,000,000 kilos of tea, for example, needs to bid for 2 or 2.5 million kilos of tea because they don't get every lot they bid for. So if you take away demand from the auction, if a buyer has a total demand requirement, annual demand requirement of say 50 million kilos, and you permit him to buy 30 million outside the auctions, the level of competition in the auction will be affected not only for the 30 million that he doesn't buy, but another 40 or 50 million that he would have had to bid for in order to buy that 30 million. Right. So it's actually a no-brainer that if you have parallel systems running, even if there's no overt collusion, you'll be weakening the auction. So therefore, the auction should not be the price barometer, but it is. So I don't believe that a dual system can survive. Now we need to sell 50% of our teas in the auctions, but buyers don't need to buy 50% of their purchases in the auctions. So it's a total hodgepodge. I have brought up the issue repeatedly at the tea board. Now they have Mahadevan's report in hand. Even that is being implemented very slowly. But I would warn that that's not a panacea. That will not be a panacea unless you ensure that 100% of tea is sold through the auctions. If you can't do that, I feel that the government and the tea board should withdraw from the auctions. The brokers who sell tea on behalf of the producers to the buyers in the auctions, brokers can organize their own auctions, right? That won't be a universal barometer, price barometer. It would be like any other sale. There would be competition, the marketing of tea, the primary marketing of tea would be liberalized in a way that would benefit everyone. The alternative, as I told you before, and I'm repeating myself many times now, is have everything in the auctions, 100% in the auctions.
How can the plantation model stay relevant in these changing times, even as the small tea grower community is growing?
The organized sector today is struggling because it has low productivity, investment, large-scale theft and malpractice, and an inability to carve a niche out for itself. There are companies, even in today's scenario, where small growers have a cost of production which is half that of the organized sector, or maybe even less. There are companies which are doing well because small growers, the way they are set up and the fact that they sell their produce to bottling factories, they cannot make very good teas. There are always exceptions. There are some bottling factories that buy only the best quality green leaf from small growers. There are small growers who pluck very well. So there are exceptions. But the general trend in the small tea grower sector is that their quality is not as good as the organized sector on an average. And there are estates in the organized sector that make superlative teas. Their cost of production is much higher. But especially this year, they are getting huge premiums. I would like to bring to your attention that a medium Assam today is selling at 180 rupees a kilo, 180 to maybe 200 rupees a kilo. The best is 400 plus. So you have a premium, a quality premium of 200 plus. And let me tell you, the cost of production differential is not 200. Therefore, people who aren't focusing on quality, and I'm talking about really, really good quality,
Right.
they're going to lose out this year. They will lose out to people who are focusing on that kind of quality. I suppose that's the way to go. If you do go that way, there would also be spin-off benefits for everyone because your volume will come down. It would be of interest to you that there are some areas of Assam where large-scale theft and dacoity of green tea leaves takes place. And I've been observing that many of the tea companies, the majors, the tea majors as you would call them, who've had to divest their units, the units that they're getting rid of and the bulk of their assets are in the areas where this green leaf theft is rampant. And I feel for them because it's the green leaf is sold to people who buy it, and there is no there's no certificate of origin in the case of green leaf.
Right.
If you have a bottle factory and somebody brings 2 trucks of fairly acceptable leaf to you, you will buy it. You don't ask, where did you
Yeah.
get this from?
Yeah. Is something being done about this?
The leaf is being stolen from the composite gardens, the estate gardens. The people who are doing the stealing are local people, and the government is doing its best, to help. But it's endemic in certain areas. I have a sneaking feeling that one of the big reasons for majors having problems in their units is this. I started by saying that small tea growers can produce green leaf at half or less the cost of production of established garden. But there are ways of handling it, creating niche markets for yourself. But if you have so many different pressures on you, and one of them is, theft, then you buckle.
During the past few months, the Tea Board of India has shown signs of change. Stakeholders met to share a better understanding of the prevailing views of the Tea Act of 1953. Several amendments were proposed and sections within the Act were revised or discarded. The Minister of State for Commerce and Ministry, Anupriya Singh Patel, also visited several tea regions, meeting various groups from the tea industry. We spoke to Prabhat Bezboruah, Chairman of the Tea Board of India, on the changes that are underway. There has been news about the various reforms underway at the Tea Board. What can we expect in the coming year?
The government is going to revamp the Tea Act. It's going to be a wholesale revamp. The role of Tea Board is also going to be redefined. That's a work in progress, and it's already happening. Even the Plantation Labour Act is going to get subsumed once the Code on Wages and the Occupational Safety and Health Hazards Act are implemented. They've already been passed, but the implementation is being delayed a bit because the government is already under a lot of pressure. The economy is already under a lot of pressure due to the 2 COVID waves and the resulting huge disruption in trade. And as soon as it comes in, the Plantation Labour Act will be subsumed by those 2 new acts. And the 2 acts have a totally different take on the remuneration that a plantation worker should get. So that's one big change that we are foreseeing. It will impact the organized sector as well as the unorganized sector, as well as the small tea growers. And hopefully it will create a little more level playing field. The other aspect is the Tea Act itself. The Tea Act is being amended. Once it's amended, the role of the Tea Board will change.
Will we be seeing this in 2022?
Well, about the Code on Wages, I don't know. If you bring in the Code on Wages and the Occupational Safety and Health Hazards Act now, suddenly, there'll be huge numbers of small and marginal businesses that may go under. And it will be a big disrupting factor in the Indian economy. So I feel that the Code on Wages and the Occupational Safety and Health Hazards Act will be implemented in 2023, not 22. The Tea Act amendments and modifications will definitely come through in 2022 itself.
Should the Tea Board become the Tea Market Expansion Board once again, as suggested in the letter by the Guwahati Tea Auction Buyers Association? Should the focus be on building the market and promoting tea? Should that be the tea board's priority?
Definitely. I mean, that's what I've been saying for the last 3 years. I think that same letter was sent by the ITEF, the ITEA, the Indian Tea Exporters Association. So people are realizing that the tea board should focus on marketing rather than on regulation. Quality control, marketing, and they need to ensure that good teas are sold in the country. They need to ensure that demand for tea goes up.
You spoke of quality being one of those things to go after, but is there enough innovation happening in the industry that you think is going to help tea get better prices?
Innovation is there at the front end. So they've come up with really fantastic tea rooms and tea boutiques where they sell really premium teas and all. And definitely, this is one area where we should move forward. In Australia and in the US, there have been new methods of brewing tea, like pressure steam rather than water, which brings out more of the flavor. So all those things are happening. But we are dealing with an output of 1,390 million kilos. These innovative methods of reaching the ultimate consumer are welcome. It's not going to help bring that 1,390 or any sizable percentage of that output out of the morass. It won't. You need to be innovative in the field, which is not coming through. You need to be open-minded to new technology in the factories, which is not coming through. Basically, the tea industry remains very hidebound. I believe that we do need to come out of our shell, and we need to be receptive to new technology.
What's the tea board's response to challenges and concerns faced by the industry?
We tend to give a lot of importance to the tea board, but the tea board's abilities are limited. Ability to really help the industry in very significant ways is limited. But the tea board can change its focus. Now, what does the tea board do? One, I told you already, they run the auctions. The auctions are not badly run. The tea board is, I don't think that they're doing a very, very bad job, but the whole structure of the auctions is wrong, and the tea board hasn't restructured them. And we just took the manual auction and converted it into a replica, electronic replica, where the hammer was replaced by the mouse. When we had the option, the opportunity of redesigning the whole platform, the whole structure of the platform, we had the opportunity, but we lost it. That was in 2008, 7, 8. Now, again, the tea board is over-regulating the industry, issuing licenses at its own whim. So, that's really not the job of the tea board. The tea board should actually monitor what is being imported into the country. You mentioned that, cheap imports. We can't block imports because under WTO, you have to discourage it by having an import duty. And we already have 100% import duty on tea. You can't go above that, and you shouldn't actually, right? So, but we can ensure that the tea coming into the country is clean. The tea board has to monitor at least. The tea board is not doing that. Maybe they will now. I mean, but so far they haven't done it. They need to check what kind of packets are being sold in the market. We talk about the young generation not being that enthusiastic about tea, moving on to other hot beverages like coffee and stuff like that. What are we doing to ensure that packets are of a reasonable quality? What are we doing? I'm surprised that there are packets which are being launched below the most economy packet. You're going below the worst quality you already have to try and attract new customers. I fear that this kind of a strategy would actually push people away from tea. I feel that this whole concept of competing on price, like they do in supermarkets in Europe and America, where a lot of things are price driven. I feel that that strategy should not be aped in India, because much lower segment that we are already in. In supermarkets in America and Europe, the price of tea that they have on their shelves is fairly high compared to our prices. So for them, it does make sense to compete on price. But in India, the cheapest packets are already very cheap. And if you actually try to offer the consumer something cheaper, you have to compromise on quality.
Right.
And those kind of consumers who are offered these very cheap and very poor quality teas would get turned off from tea permanently, maybe.
Yeah.
So, I think that the marketing wars should be fought on quality rather than on price. And that would expand the overall market for tea. And I feel that Tea Board has a role to play there, because I feel we should look at the really cheaper packets and maybe the other packets and test them. We should also test what's coming out from our gardens and ensure that all the tea that is sold in India is as safe as that which is exported. Because we talk about other countries, importing countries, putting non-tariff barriers on our tea by reducing their maximum residue limits. But I don't think that's wrong on their part. If somebody wants to protect its citizens more stringently, then they damn well have the right to do so.
Yeah.
And we must ensure that our own citizens in the country are drinking tea which is as safe as that which is exported.
What about news of the tea board coming under the Ministry of Agriculture? Is that something the industry or the board has been pushing for?
The board hasn't been pushing for it. There was a meeting recently where this, among other things, was discussed, but the meeting didn't reach any conclusion. There's going to be another meeting, and I think at the end of that meeting, we'll have a clear guidance about what's going to happen in the future. As far as the industry is concerned, I think small tea growers are very keen that the board and the industry be brought under the agriculture ministry. Small tea growers are very keen. As far as the larger producers are concerned and the associations are concerned, there's no consensus. I think some people would prefer to be under agriculture and others would like the status quo. Tea came under commerce because it was India's most important export in the 50s, up to about 1953 or 54. Believe it or not, it was the biggest, it was an export yielding the biggest revenue, the biggest value rather. So therefore it came under commerce. Today, tea exports are under 1 billion in a total export value of about 300 billion. So it's like 0.3%. So it doesn't deserve to be in the commerce ministry actually, but for historical reasons we are.
Right.
And moving it to agriculture might help small growers. I am not sure how much benefit it will bring.
Right.
Taking it out of commerce might bring the export focus down further. And as I said, exports remain a large part of our business plan. I mean, even though domestic consumption is 5 times exports practically now, even then exports are crucial in stabilizing the market and ensuring a better price for producers. So I wouldn't like the export focus to go.
What about the tea brands that are coming up? What role can they play in building this market and supporting the industry? What would you like to see them do?
I'd like to see them compete on quality as they are doing. Tea Box, people like that have some really high quality offerings. But I would also like them to expand their markets faster than they are doing. Because, as I told you, these innovative marketing approaches are only barely scratching the surface when you're talking about a production level of 1,390 million kilos. If you have 100,000 or 120,000 kilos, which is going into one of these premium brands, it's not really going to make much of an impact on the entire industry, on the industry as a whole. But that's not to demean their efforts or their importance. They are very important, because although Darjeeling was only 7 million kilos production, it used to act as a flagship of India, a flagship produce of India. It got the GI, and even today, when you talk about premium teas, the first tea that comes to mind is Darjeeling. So likewise, some of these brands which have come into the market recently, as long as they focus on exclusivity and high quality, as long as they are able to lift the whole category up a little bit.
They become a face of the industry, isn't it? Because they showcase the best of what is available and the best of what is possible.
Exactly. And you see, what would happen is, if somebody drinks their tea, they would like it a lot. And maybe they would try another few brands. Maybe their friends who can't afford such high-priced teas would buy something else.
Will the domestic market compensate for what is lost in the export market?
Exports now are only 20% or less of our total production, 17% of total production. So we need to get people in India to drink more tea and better tea. If we can do that, a lot of our marketing problems will be over. But exports are important because India needs exports, number one. And without exports, you can't establish a stable and remunerative primary market for tea. So for both those reasons, we need to focus on both exports as well as boosting domestic demand up.
What would you say about the whole move to organic? Darjeeling seems to be moving towards turning organic as a way to survive. Do you think that's necessary, especially on the back of what has happened in Sri Lanka?
You see, Darjeeling needs organic because the difference between a conventional estate, the yield difference between a conventional estate and an organic one in Darjeeling is less than it is here in Assam. Assam is a hot house. It's like a greenhouse, high temperatures, extremely humid conditions. Under these conditions, conventional agriculture will give you, if not double, but almost double the crop of organic agriculture in tea. Therefore, you need to sell your organic produce at almost double the price of your conventional produce, which in the recent past, or even in the last 20, 30 years, hasn't been the case. There is strong demand for organic tea, but it's at a price which is 30 or 40% more than conventional teas. And with that kind of a price premium for organic, it won't be sustainable. And that's what happened in Sri Lanka. That was a bold step they took. And, if they had stuck to it, and if the global tea industry became organic, you would be seeing huge price increases. You'd see prices moving into the $7-8 bracket worldwide, maybe more actually. The whole industry, the entire global industry would have to convert.
Intrigued by what you heard in today's podcast? Would you like to learn more from our global network of Tea Biz journalists and tea experts? Remember to visit the Tea Biz website for more comprehensive coverage. That's www.t-biz.com. Thanks for listening.